everybody, my name is Caitlin and you are watching Zombie Eats Books, and I am filming late at night, which is why the lighting is so horrible, but it's really the only time I could do it. This is the second half of my January wrap-up, so I'll get on with the books. The first one is Heart of the Fae by Emma Hamm. This was published in 2016, and Emma Hamm is an American author. I read this because I heard about it on another booktuber's channel, and this booktuber loves Juliet Marillier, and this book seems similar to the kind of stories that Juliet Marillier generally puts out. So since she also loved this book, I was like, hey, I'm probably gonna love that book. I should buy that. And no. So the story is a mashup between Beauty and the Beast and Irish mythology, which is similar to what Marillier writes. And Marillier writes these really lush, intricate, beautiful landscapes and characters, and it's just these really beautifully woven fairy tales. This, not so much. Sorry about that. The dog is still barking even though it's late at night. This is great. Anyway, I'm not going to compare her anymore to Juliet Marillier because I don't think that's fair. I don't think, you should compare authors like that and expect one to be as good as the other like I did. That was my mistake. So I'm just going to tell you what I didn't like about the book on its own. I thought that the main character was really inconsistent. Like, there were times where she was really calm and serene and likable and just a rational character that you can get behind. And then in a second, she would snap to this irrational, angry character. There'd be exclamation points in her dialogue that I just didn't understand, and it made me hate her. And then there were these really cheesy conversations between her and her love interest, which, don't get me wrong, I love some smut every once in a while. I will read a smutty novel and really enjoy it. But this one didn't live up to my smutty expectations. I knew that there was going to be a romance in it, and I was anticipating that and hoping that I would really like it, and it was not good. It was not good. It was just bad writing. And honestly, that's all I really want to say about this novel. I hate doing bad reviews. Yeah, so I'm just going to move on. I gave that a 2 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read was Pastoralia, not sure how to say that, by George Saunders. And this was published in 2001. This is a novella and then like 3 or 4 short stories within. So first of all, the novella, which was the first that I read, was so good. I loved it. It reminded me of George Orwell because the way that he writes, Saunders has this gift for just bringing out the absurdities of American culture and showing them to you in all their glory. And it makes for this really funny, darkly funny, yet depressing, heartbreaking narrative. And I loved how he did that. I thought the novella was the strongest, and then there were a couple others that I really liked as well that had that same vibe, and then there were a couple that I just didn't like as much. So overall, I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars just because there was such a mix for me. From what I saw of what I really liked, I definitely want to read more George Saunders. If you've read any of his stuff and you have any suggestions for me, let me know. I do have Lincoln in the Bardo, which I'm guessing isn't going to be similar to that in its vibe, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, let me know if I should read that next or if I should pick up something else by him. So next I read Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. This was published in 1988 originally, and then it was translated from the Japanese in 1993 by Megan Bacchus, I think. So this was 2 stories. The first one was Kitchen, and then the next one I can't remember the name of. But the second one was really, really short. Kitchen was really short as well, but the next one was really, really short. Both of them are about grief. The first one, it's a young woman who loses her grandma. Second one, it's a young woman who loses her boyfriend. And the way that the author writes is really simple, but it's really beautiful in its simplicity. She has this way of portraying grief that I think is really, really authentic. It's this hyper focus that people have when they're feeling really, really deep pain, like everything takes on this hyper meaning. But it's also contrasted with, just listlessness, like not feeling much of anything other than that deep, deep pain, and just sort of walking through life like a zombie as you're trying to deal with your grief. Thought that was just really well done. I thought that the first story had more interesting characters than the second story, even though I liked and connected with the second story a little better than the first story, which I thought was kind of weird considering that the characters were less interesting in the second story. You would think that it would be the other way around. But yeah, I enjoyed both stories, and I ended up giving that one a 4 out of 5 stars. Sorry, I'm going through these pretty quickly because I'm just trying to get shit done. So Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno, YA. I don't really like YA. This was published in 2018, and Katrina Leno is an American author. So I don't really know why I read that. Honestly, I get pulled into YA all the time, even though, well, not all the time, but I get pulled into it enough that I sort of chastise myself because I don't really like YA, but every once in a while I'll just find this diamond in the rough that I really fall in love with. But unfortunately, that book was not it. I'm not saying it was a bad book. It was just mediocre, which seems to be every experience with YA for me. Just mediocre. So this story is about a young woman who lives on an island, very isolated community, and it's about her sort of coming of age story the summer before she goes off to college. She has a twin sister, and their family has some magic in it. Not a spoiler. So the writing, there were actually, passages that I thought were pretty beautiful, and the writing was actually pretty decent. The plot, on the other hand, was incredibly predictable. I mean, there were things that were predictable to the T, and that really took away a lot for me. However, I will say that if you like YA, I think this like contemporary YA with little magical elements sprinkled in there, I think that you might like this book. It's not a bad book. Like I said, it just ended up being okay for me. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So I'll end on a high note. Next, I read the book of Strange New Things by Michel Faber. This was published in 2014, and I believe this is a Scottish author. At least he lives in Scotland. I didn't do my research. I should have done my research. I don't know if he grew up there, but that's where he lives now, I think. Anyway, so briefly, the premise of this book is about a minister, and he is hired by this corporation who has started colonizing this alien planet to go and convert the local alien life to Christianity and connect with them. And it is fascinating. I read this book so much quicker than I thought I would because it is a long book. The language is sort of written in this simple way, but also just really beautifully, and I flew through it. I was just mesmerized, fascinated, whatever you want to call it, and I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. One of the big questions that they bring up, and I think it's a very obvious question when you think about the plot, is the Bible meant for alien life? Does it apply to aliens the same way that it applies to humans? That's one of the questions that this minister sort of has to figure out as the book progresses. And it's about relationships. It's about the beliefs that we ourselves as individuals have to hold in order to maintain the realities that we've constructed in our heads. Because everybody has a different sense of reality, right? Reality doesn't come from the outside so much as it comes from the way that you perceive things. And so what are the things that we ignore, and what are the things that we retain and keep in order to maintain our beliefs? That book made me think so much, and like I said, I just loved it. I can't recommend it enough. I think it's one of those books that people can read and come out with completely different things regarding what it's about, and I think that's great. And it has sort of this open-ended ending. That's redundant. It's open-ended, the ending is, and I really love that as well. I love it when an author doesn't dumb down a book for you and lets you think about things, lets you decide things, as opposed to trying to show you something very specific. Read that. You should read that. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. My favorite book of the year so far. I'm definitely going to be reading more Michelle Faber. And yeah, that's all I've got. That's it. I'm so glad I finished my January wrap-up, despite all the barking. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you thought about them. Let me know if any of these interest you. I do love replying to comments. I realize I haven't been very active on BookTube for a little while, but hopefully I am back in a more consistent way and can, engage and interact a little bit better than I have been doing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.